There are those times when you really should take to heart what your colleagues say, and maybe the animals weren't such a good idea. But, but you know what? I have a feeling it was a bit noisy around there, anyways. Every year, I wonder what part of this story, the Christmas story, will touch my heart. What part of this story will have an impact on me after the season of Advent and Christmas are done? What part of this story, or what character, will cause me to take a step back and ponder this story from a fresh perspective? Some years it has been Mary, the young Galilean girl, pregnant and in a precarious position, unwed, growing up in a patriarchal society and pondering what it would mean for her to birth the one who would turn the world upside down. And as a mother myself, I thought of the pangs of childbirth she would experience and the feeling of fear and uncertainty, all bundled into the one big unknown. Other years, I resonated with Joseph, who oftentimes was considered an innocent bystander in all of this. In fact, the birth story in the Gospel of Luke places very little emphasis on the men in this story. The words of wonder and awe, well, they belong to the women. But I wonder if Joseph felt the strain and shame of accompanying an unwed girl on an arduous journey. And needless to say, he had nothing to do with the pregnancy of the young woman he is accompanying. Yet somehow, he is responsible for her. And what role did his lineage play in this story? He was a descendant of David, and it was imperative that he would be counted as part of a census in the city of David, Bethlehem. So as a member of a conquered people group, he was forced to travel about 90 miles to be counted in the census, a head count, so to speak, because where the conquering empire might know just how many people it had available to tax. And the frantic activity Joseph would face when he got to Bethlehem was a far cry from the city of his quiet little town of Nazareth. I sense Joseph felt the weight of the world upon his shoulders. And one year, what touched me was the shepherds, the lowly, stinky shepherds on the outskirts of town. Perhaps young boys or girls who stayed out all night protecting the sheep. It was a dangerous job and one of the lowest on the pay scale. But they were the first ones invited to celebrate the divine birth. What a reversal. Well, then, one year it was the Magi for me, or the wise men, that caught my eye in the storyline. The three stately characters who are typically lined up in a neat row facing the manger. And I wondered that year if they really were wise men. After all, these characters were of a subclass of Persian priests, of great wealth and power, and they knew that once they embarked on this journey, there was no turning back. They left job security behind, and they set off to see this king. Incidentally, they came along much later in the story, after the birth. And then what did they do? They leave their adorned garments, perhaps somewhere by the wayside, and perhaps retreat to a sleepy little town in the West. Then, of course, there is the matter of the baby. Each year I ponder what the first Christmas felt like to the family, to the midwives who most likely helped in the delivery room, to those who brought blankets and cleaned up the mess. What was the waiting of that first Advent like for the people who longed for life to be different? Was this really the time when the prophet Isaiah's foretelling the future becomes a reality? What does hope look like for the oppressed people, overtaxed, overburdened, overwrought with injustice? What must it have felt like to long for a Messiah? And then along comes this baby born in a stable, in a guest room with animals. A baby who will have the authority, will have the government rest upon his shoulders, and endless peace with justice and righteousness will lead the way. And then, after the baby, or along with the baby, comes the innkeeper. The innkeeper, the one who sometimes gets a bad rap in this narrative, because we often hear, there's no room for you at this inn. No room when a tired Mary and Joseph seek shelter and a place to rest from a journey they never imagined being in the first place. May I have my two helpers carry my friends to that room? All right. Thank you, dear. Thank you. I had chickens when I grew up, but I didn't preach, so So the innkeeper in this inn, and the word in Luke's gospel, the word inn is translated as kataluma, or guest room in the house. You see, in Bethlehem, and I can attest to this firsthand, and I know many of you who have traveled to the Holy Land can also appreciate this. Hospitality is of the utmost importance to the family, to the friends that stop by, and to the strangers. And the animals, well, they were often kept close to the family. So most likely, this stable, accommodating Mary and Joseph and Jesus and the animals was an extension of the home and an extension of the homeowner's hospitality. You see, everyone matters in the birth narrative. Everyone and everything matters in this story. So every year I wait and I wonder what part of this age-old story will grab a hold of me, and how will it impact my life this year? What part of this narrative will I find comfort and hope in? And what part of this story or the people in it will cause me to have more questions than answers, more doubt at times than certainty. So in the midst of all the preparations this year, I waited. And I waited. And I wondered. And I felt a bit of angst while writing this message for tonight, because it felt like I hadn't gotten it yet. Why? Why haven't I felt it yet? That one thing that will impact my life, that will give me this time of reflection and pondering. And I've been trying so hard to find it. The moment which renews my passion and engages my wonder and touches my heart. And then I realized, perhaps a bit surprised, that what has impacted me most about the story this year has been brewing within me all year long. I am compelled by the solidarity of God through the ordinary birth of Jesus. I am compelled by the fact that in the stable lies a God who is deeply embedded in the solidarity of humanity. And I am compelled by the solidarity of God that Pastor Munther Isaac of Christmas Lutheran Church in Bethlehem speaks of. When people ask him this question, where is God in the suffering of our world? And his reply, God is in the rubble. God in solidarity with us, in our pain, in our devastating diagnoses, our divorce, our death, our financial struggles, our racial injustice, in the brutalities of war, and in the times when our lives are a mess and we just can't seem to get it right. God in solidarity with those who experience excruciating empires and economies from the position of the weak and the powerless ones. And in this season of Christmas, Bethlehem lies quiet. But hope, peace, joy, and love is the story of Christmas and Advent. And we have this remarkable opportunity to join Jesus as incarnations and in solidarity of God's peace on earth for however long it takes. No one, from Mary to Joseph, to the innkeeper, to the shepherds, to the wise men, to the animals, to you and to me, is left out of this story. You see, there is always room in the stable, and there is always room at this table. So let me ask you, where are you in this story tonight? Amen.